because I'm going to give you guys some real history on how the so-called Black Manosphere started on YouTube or on social media. Because one of the biggest misconceptions that is going on in the black sector of YouTube is that three individuals, right, three content creators started what we now call the so-called Black Manosphere.
Most of black men's problems aren't the white man, they're the black woman.
And I literally stumbled upon you, Rouge, Rorsey, and it kind of blew my mind.
Times the topics that are discussed and that are brought forth have already been talked about millions and millions of times. And we're pretty much beating a dead horse right now.
In an article for The Atlantic, historian Netta Gordon-Reed explained that origin stories exist for a reason. Quote, they inform our sense of self, telling us what kind of people we believe we are, what kind of nation we believe we live in, she explained. Quote, they usually carry, at least, a hope that where we started might hold the key to where we are in the present. Online communities are difficult to document, especially ones that exist primarily on YouTube. In an ordinary attempt at archival research, a researcher must scavenge through thousands of documents that are geographically isolated. YouTube simplifies this onerous task but also poses its own problems. Most channels and videos have short lifespans. Regarding the Black YouTube gender war, within a decade, many channels were terminated through flagging and self-termination. Some videos are permanently listed as private or unlisted. Current content creators have hidden past videos to rebrand themselves. What is a researcher to do? This void of lost videos has allowed YouTubers to rewrite the history of the Black Manosphere. Depending on who is narrating, certain characters get inserted into the story who played no significant role in the group's founding. Some include themselves into the story and others insert their own perspective without citing evidence. Recently, Solo TV 84 tried to expand the meritorious title of the Big Three, which stands for the founders of the Black Manosphere, Oshay Duke Jackson, Mumia Obsidian Ali, and AngryMan, into the Big Four. But only Jackson has publicly acknowledged Solo's request. Overall, the absence of a clear, linear history has produced numerous, albeit distorted, origin stories about this online community. The desire to defend one's and others' image will certainly make some listeners object to the claims made in this video. Considering these challenges, this narrative does not seek to be comprehensive. Instead, it seeks to lay a blueprint for people wanting to delve more into the history of this space as well as loosely affiliated groups such as pro-black divestors, etc. It largely relies on YouTube videos made by past and current content creators, oral histories, blogs, and forums. In no way am I endorsing or condemning these groups' belief or claims, but rather I'm seeking to outline a linear history with the limited sources available. Although the Black Manosphere purports itself as a space where black men have a voice for the first time, it didn't start from scratch. It built itself off a nearly 7-year pre-existing loosely affiliated online community of black men and women critiquing one another in black culture, as well as operated as an offshoot of the larger, mostly white manosphere which derives from the men's rights movement. This previous history is poorly archived and scattered, so most of the evidence comes from longtime YouTubers such as Big J XXX and Wacky World TV and confirmed by a few existing channels that formed over a decade ago.
Users bashing black women. And they talk about how black women are overweight, black women are, they don't know how to be submissive in relationships and they want to wear the pants in a relationship. They say how black women run black men away, black women bring a lot of things on themselves and don't want to take accountability.
The Black YouTube gender war, according to Wacky World TV, began in 2008. The term gender war is a phrase used in American popular culture and largely consists of men and women making valid and inaccurate assessments against one another regarding gender relations. YouTube certainly wasn't the beginning of this exchange, but it was a new medium that had fewer restrictions in publications, daytime television, and radio shows. YouTube had only existed for 3 years, and most content creators had not yet realized its propitious power and influence. The gender war began inadvertently on a channel called Girl Talk TV, where YouTuber Temple Christians gave women dating advice from a male perspective. In response to a subscriber's question, he published a video about why black men dated interracially, which he attributed to black women's attitudes.
You are sexy.
Embrace me.
I don't like
right
your
now.
attitude. What? I don't like your attitude.
He initially intended to make it a 3-part series since YouTube restricted content creators to 10-minute videos. Before he uploaded a part 2, black women made response videos which were commonplace on the site at the time. The video summarily angered his female followers and led men and some women to defend him. Thus, the black YouTube gender war was born according to Wacky World TV. The controversy never dissipated. Gradually, this loosely affiliated group expanded response videos to critiquing what they viewed as dysfunctional behavior in black culture, black relationships, and the systematic and societal mistreatment of black men. For historical context, the argument that black people are inherently dysfunctional or embrace it is an assessment conservative and liberals alike have made since the 1970s, as urban areas experienced deindustrialization, disinvestment, and heavier policing as a result of increased race and crime. Although few content creators disclose their biographies, many came of age during urban decline and societal problems such as teenage pregnancies and out-of-wedlock births increased. So it's no surprise that some of them view these issues as cultural problems unique to black people rather than systemic inequalities that pervade American capitalism. Furthermore, black intellectuals have long promulgated these talking points. Neoconservative economist Thomas Sowell, one of the prominent intellectuals the Black Manosphere often quotes, has argued throughout his works that the problem inflicting poor black people can be attributed to the lack of moral values and strong work ethic. Welfare and affirmative action policies, according to him, undermine middle-class values of hard work and thrift and made black people dependent on government assistance. The argument of whether self-help and state interventions are mutually exclusive and the benefits and limits of capitalism have been argued by liberal and conservative scholars, and I'll avoid it for now because I don't want this video to boil down to academic jargon. Despite having long left the platform, the content creators who constituted this embryonic space planted the seeds for the Black Manosphere. According to Wacky World TV, these YouTubers included himself, Pink Elephant, Crazy Bruh, Sergeant Willie Pete, Jew Bug Obama, Solon Black, Doug Titian, Mike V, Dark One's Son, Wise Nubian, G Weed, 305, 366, Captain Solo, Stylistic aka Mr. Monstrosity 19, Covina Man, Third War Khalil, and others who have long been forgotten. All of them were not men. There were a handful of women who agreed with men in the space and made their own content such as Nubian Queen and Humble Queen, which is contrary to the contemporary uneasiness with women present in the space. Only a handful of these channels still exist, and a few YouTubers are still on the platform. Most of these content creators left the platform due to flagging from female critics, self-termination after moving on with their lives, or were kicked off YouTube. If you listen to the original content that still exists and read video titles, you'll notice their messages are isomorphic to what individuals discuss today, so subtracting red pill ideology. Akin to contemporary British YouTubers in the Black Manosphere, Doug Titian, a black British man, believed that American and UK culture was similar regarding relationships between black men and women. He also claimed that, quote, dysfunctional black women have used various platforms such as Oprah and Tyra Banks to, quote, bash black men, while black men lack an outlet to respond. To him, these negative depictions have tarnished black men's image, and black men now needed to vent.
For the last 30 years or so, black women have used every platform and every opportunity to bash black men. But the problem is, or the problem has been, that black men have not been allowed to express their grievances with black women in any public forum. For example, there are no TV programs dedicated to men's issues. For example, there is no Oprah Winfrey for men. So what's happened over the last 30 years is we've had a completely one-sided perspective.
In another video, he argued that single motherhood is the most destructive issue facing black people and that men should avoid dating them. All his arguments echo current dialogues in the Black Manosphere. Pink Elephant, a pretty balanced YouTuber because of his avoidance of generalizations, published numerous videos about his views on professional black women struggling with dating, the normalization of dysfunctional behavior within black culture, and proposed solutions to improve relationships between black men and women. It is important to note that these content creators had incredibly small followings, but the space allowed ordinary black men and women to air their grievances without filter and comment about contemporary events. A handful of contributors attempted to archive these videos on a site called GenerationX.net, which was like Free Speech Avenger minus the pornography, but the license wasn't renewed in 2014, so all the material has been lost. According to Wacky World TV and Big J XXX, This content was more substantial and balanced in its approach, and at least it tried to have an uplifting message for black men. It sought to engage the intellectual nuance of topics. Many of the original creators were pro-black despite the contemporary space opposing the group. Infighting still exists and it led to fallouts. Most men were seeking a relationship with quality black women and wanted to avoid relationship with women deemed undesirable. But there is a problem here. This narrative is incredibly male-centric and littered with nostalgia. Because the original content creators are disgruntled with the contemporary space, it has allowed them to romanticize what was briefly known as the black male collective consciousness. This early iteration of the Manosphere oversaw the tragic murder of Agent McGowan by Anthony Powell, who had listened to Sergeant Willie Pete. If you listen to Powell's video, he sounds eerily familiar to content creators today in his diatribes about black women.
I've already been persecuting black men for the shit that they're doing. But I don't blame them, I blame you. You want to know why? Because you choose. You make the choice. You choose these type of men. You're attracted to these type of men. You're attracted to these no good motherfuckers that ain't gonna do shit for your ass because you want some kind of a fucking challenge. You want some kind of a soap opera lifestyle.
The murder of Agent McGowan was a nadir in the black YouTube gender war, but the warring continued. Although the women these men feuded with are either gone or forgotten, Black Barbie doll videos are still up and provide a window to some black women's perspective about the space. She argued that these male content creators in the gender war were bashing black women. In a video called Flag War, she claimed black men deflected criticism by telling their critics to ignore them or claim YouTube didn't reflect reality.
However, the black men's defense on YouTube seems to be, if black women do not like being bitched, then they should just click to the next video. Black men defend their attack videos by saying that this is not real life. YouTube is not real life. But I have to say that the words sound real to me. And the impact of these words is being felt by black women across the cyber world, not just the black women on YouTube.
She also berated content creators who lambast black women for wearing weaves, dating interracially, as well as mocked them for being undesirable. She certainly didn't view the space as black male empowerment. A female subscriber of mine who has been following the space since 2008 when she was just 17 informed me that the talking points used to be much worse before YouTube changed its term of services. She relayed, quote, they first bashed black women under the guise of, quote, protecting black men and boys. They used news article stories or video clips as supposed, quote, evidence of black women being the main problem within the black community. Tommy Sotomayor used to push this heavily, and he was the golden boy of the Manosphere. Mainly because Tommy would get black women to call into his show just to verbally abuse them for his audience. He would yell and scream over any person who tried to respond as well. Because bashing black women was incredibly popular in the early 2010s, and it was a money grab for a lot of people, Phil the Advice Show constantly used to make videos on black women too. They were news stories though. He kind of synced his way into the Pan-Africanist thing. Tariq did too, until he started grifting off the ADOS movement started by Yvette Carnell and Anthony Moore. A lot of these Manosphere guys left and hid behind a veneer of pro-blackness and, quote, caring about their people. Just for the record, Tommy Sotomayor has never claimed to be affiliated with the Manosphere or even this early iteration of the space, despite some claiming him to be. But he did pioneer making profitable content of attacking black women and is held with high regard within the contemporary Black Manosphere. The early iteration of the Black Manosphere has similarities and differences with the present space. Both groups discussed the plight of black men in America and abroad and in their relationships with black women, feuded with female critics and got flagged as a result, and purported themselves as an outlet for black men, which both iterations claim had never existed before. Some content creators hid their identities while others revealed themselves. The talking points reinforced critics' claim of repetitiveness and circular arguments in the space. The first iteration didn't achieve any tangible goals, but rather it sought to be a space for black men to vent their frustrations and build a political consciousness among its listeners. However, as with all online communities, some of this rhetoric became too extreme and unfortunately culminated in the death of one person. What is known as the Black Manosphere emerged in 2015 and grew when black men in the larger manosphere left the space. Why this happens vary depending on who is narrating. Oshay Duke Jackson claimed the idea of the Black Manosphere came from Obsidian, who decided one day that black men needed a voice and later placed him as the head in 2017.
2015, and a hot summer day in Philadelphia, where Mumia Obsidian Ali decided that black men would have a voice, and the brainchild in his mind was the Black Manosphere 2.0 generation.
This description is incredibly vague and ignores Obsidian's involvement in the men's rights movement. YouTuber Zero argued that although the Manosphere formed as a response to feminism, black men left because they believed the self-improvement meant no access to sex.
Like, can I just give y'all some historical context on this shit? Like, it's all easily researchable, but I know no one's gonna research the shit. This shit is super easy. The Manosphere was created in response to feminism. Like, I'm just gonna repeat that. It was created in response to feminism. That was the original purpose, the original goal of the Manosphere. The thing is that there are two Manospheres now. The thing is, black people bailed out of the Manosphere in general because they thought it meant no pussy. It is literally this simple. As soon as niggas thought that the Manosphere meant get your shit together and focus on yourself, as soon as they thought that meant no pussy, they formed the Black Manosphere.
But his claim ignores complaints about white men's racism and intolerance to discuss racial issues. At least in 2014, black men have expressed dissatisfaction with the Manosphere's white-centric environment. In an obscure blog called Grand Admiral Game, the author argued that a, quote, great deal of the Manosphere is geared towards white men and other races that can pass for white or can say, at least I'm not black. He continued to say that black men were demonized if even thinking or achieving sexual conquest overseas. Quote, what we must realize is that this is competition, and from the white man's perspective, the black man is their adversary or at best pawns. Even in 2015, self-identified black men's rights activist Obsidian assessed the absence of black men in the men's rights movement in a blog post for A Voice for Men. At the time, he believed black men were fully capable of forming their own manosphere, but the prevailing whiteness and, quote, by extension, racism, discouraged them from joining. And even LAR Movement admitted on a Brother Pill podcast episode that although anti-feminism united men in the space, white men still believed that black men could easily have sex with white women. Race certainly was a driving factor in the schism, but another reason as to why the Black Manosphere formed and subsequently grew is rooted in the larger Manosphere growing link with far-right ideologies.
I am officially running for President of the United States, and we are going to make our country great again.
The Red Pill was largely apolitical until the summer of 2016. Initially, followers didn't rally around Trump in masses, at least not through Red Pill spaces. But as scholars Piers Dignam and Dina Rawlinger documented, quote, forum leaders linked the forum's neoliberal misogynistic collective identity of alpha masculinity to Trump's public persona and frame his political ascendance as an opportunity to effectively push back against feminism and get a, quote, real men into the White House. Trump's explicit anti-immigration sentiment, opposition to Black Lives Matter, and male bravado contribute to the growing politicization of Red Pill forums like Roosh v. Return of Kings, which began publishing blog posts that cast white men as the true victims of oppression. Obsidian and Donovan Sharp both wrote for the blog. Racism was a novel in the men's rights movement and Red Pill forums, but the 2016 presidential election exacerbated it. Although members of the Black Manosphere often downplay the space linked with the larger, ostensibly white Manosphere, some of its longtime members originated from the space. Some, like Solo TV 84, are pickup artists and posted frequently on the blog Soul Swa. Oshay first entered YouTube solely to troll Mad Bus Driver X, a YouTuber who promotes interracial dating through his slogan SYSBM, which stands for Save Yourself Black Men. AngryMan originally was involved with the League of Dads to help men with child support. Obsidian, most notably, came from the men's rights movement. His conservative upbringing and devotion to reading academic texts arguably laid the intellectual foundation for the Black Manosphere. He frequently quotes conservative intellectuals such as Thomas Sowell, Glenn Loury, and Shelby Steele to critique black culture and women. Additionally, his experience with men's rights activists inextricably linked the Black Manosphere with the larger movement. The men's rights movement originated out of the men's liberation movement, which was a complement to women's liberation and sought to tackle men's issues without attacking women in the process in the 1970s. Ironically, feminist allies like political scientist Warren Farrell split from the group when he perceived men as being systematically disadvantaged in society. In 1993, he published what became known as the Bible of the men's rights movement, The Myth of Male Power. This link is important. Even though men's rights activists present themselves as respectable to hide their controversial views, they and the eventual red pill community presented new language and ideology to the black YouTube gender war that was almost non-existent. Black YouTube rarely discussed feminism, but the growing popularity of the red pill introduced the idea that feminism is quote-unquote ruin women and society. MRAs notably popularized the topic misandry and sought to create an equivalence between discrimination against men and women as equal, as well as back up claims with pseudoscience like claiming biology solidified men's domination over women and therefore feminism was inherently flawed and women should stay at home and not pursue professional positions. The Black Manosphere had a stronger presence on Blog Talk Radio before segueing into YouTube. None of the audio clips play anymore, but the description reveals circular arguments and how some YouTubers have rebranded themselves. Obsidian held a range of interviews with Hardcore Tito, Alan Roger Curry, AngryMan, Kerry Gockety Jones, and once interviewed self-identified white nationalist Jared Taylor, and even endorsed his book, The Color of Crime. According to longtime listeners, Obsidian originally would quote misleading claims black women said about black men and countered it with statistics and social science research. Oshay, who has publicly recanted many of his former views, largely critiqued black women and black culture with right-wing canards.
Black women have children who are more likely to be criminals, drug dealers, on welfare themselves, and have kids out of wedlock. Because black women make fucked up choices in the men that they want to fuck and have kids by. I think almost every bitch on this friends list has a baby by ain't shit nigga. Because I see it all through your timelines.
If you read the older posts on the Negro Manosphere blog by Oshay, the writings are isomorphic to what content creators discuss today. He critiqued black women's dating preference, why men should avoid dating single mothers, and why women lied about their sexual past. Gradually, this emerging group began to view itself as novel. Oshay alluded to the novelty of the space in a post explaining his motivation for creating the blog Negro Manosphere. Quote, "It is about damn time black men in the Western world have a voice. We deserve our own preferences, our own thoughts, our own media, and our own voices." Obsidian made a similar statement when he claimed he wanted to, quote, spark a real and long overdue conversation between black men and women, and introduced topics overlooked or ignored by what he referred to as black vagina vision media. AngryMan contribution was simply given a space to label, quote, the Black Manosphere. Nothing more, nothing less. The label of the Big Three likely came gradually rather than immediately, since there isn't any documentation of the phrase used in writing when the group formed. But as stated earlier in this video, the statements overlooked a nearly decade-long existence of black men on YouTube doing what the Big Three claimed was novel. These men built upon a pre-existing community and modeled themselves after prominent YouTubers such as David Carroll and Tommy Sotomayor, two YouTubers who have always operated in their own lane. Essentially, the Black Manosphere represented a codification and later monetization of a disorganized, structurally incoherent space. According to Obsidian, the Black Manosphere gained attention and eventual notoriety when female critics, notably Crystalline Carlson and Sophia Nelson, attempt to get their channels removed from YouTube in 2017, which was dubbed the hit list. It was anticlimactic. According to a subscriber and longtime follower, she informed me that most content creators temporarily hid their channels, deleted them, or left YouTube. Only a handful were flagged. The hit list likely created a stronger sense of a solidarity, importance, and strengthened the belief that the group represented all black men who were too timid to speak their minds. A belief YouTubers gradually convinced themselves was true. The Black Manosphere is far from a stagnant community. Debates, controversies, and ideologies have evolved for better and for worse. Subscribers and content creators represent all facets of black American life, even though the space can be lackluster at acknowledging its rich diversity. Despite the diversity of thought, the space openly leans to the political right, firmly opposes feminism, is skeptical about racism relevance to the plight of black people, believes white supremacy is overblown, excludes LGBTQ individuals, and aligns with various red pill ideologies regarding marriage, feminism, hypergamy, female nature, and other beliefs. It is notably a space influenced by the men's rights movement and red pill ideology, but caters its talking points to a black audience. Despite its attempts to expand its reach by covering a multitude of topics, conversations about black women and their behavior remain at the center. Like all red pill communities, most men stumble upon it because of romantic frustrations or had an unstable upbringing and hold contempt for their mothers or black people collectively. Others use the space to cope with a nagging sense of insignificance and social isolation, hence why some YouTubers never seek to evolve as content creators and live stream for hours almost every day. It helps them find a sense of community that they lack in their actual lives. The space is currently in a struggle about whether it wants to grow larger and influence public dialogue about relationships between black men and women, or whether it should operate on the margins. The former will introduce unforeseeable consequences, and the latter will forever question its true purpose. Is the space truly committed to the betterment of black men, or is it just an effort to capitalize off black trauma? That question has yet to be answered.